Hello, this is Jamesman. I'm making another video about atheism, unfortunately for many religious people. I'd just like to go through, I've had a lot of people reproach, well, not a lot of people, a few people close to me reproach me and say, why are you so against religion? Why do you despise religion so much? So I thought I'd make a video called Why Am I an Atheist? Or Why I Am an Atheist. I have obviously many more reasons than the ones I'm going to describe in this short video, but for the meantime, here's just sort of a little taster as to why Richard Dawkins said in an interview with Jeremy Paxman, why are you so annoyed with religion? And Dawkins replied, you don't have to look very far in the world to see why one might be annoyed with religion. So, I'll just get straight down to it. Why I am an atheist. Point 1. Religion and religious beliefs. I've written in it a script, by the way. I'll just have to get used to the fact, because if I don't write a script, I honestly can't fucking remember what I'm talking about, and I just go off on a tangent and then just end up being silent. I digress. Here we go. I'll just light my cigarette first. Maybe I'll have a sip of the red wine I'm drinking out of a mug once I've lit up the cigarette. Yeah, I think I'll do that. Here we go. That's nice wine. Religion and religious beliefs evolve with society, with social development, the public mindset, and scientific discovery. To deny this is to deny history, and to accept this is to accept that religion is not founded on Holy Scripture, but on current gaps in scientific theory, and has been only that way since science has actually been allowed to develop. It is therefore also to accept that science defines religion, and conclusively that religion and God represent nothing more than that which we do not currently understand. Suck on that. Point 2. The spread of religious teaching is unparalleled with any other educational faculty. Religion is the only method of teaching which has no shame in purposefully seeking out the emotionally frail, the uneducated, and worst of all, young children. Missionaries, accepting that the advanced societies have less need for religion in the black and white God-fearing sense, stubbornly and selfishly seek out those who are as yet underdeveloped in their understanding of the world. Again, understanding is dictated by scientific discovery, so just as a little side note, I think this is an inspiring win for science. If we have the facts, the religious shut their mouths and move on to something else. They can't do this forever. These civilizations ironically then bestow godlike properties to the missionaries themselves, and they become the rulers of the tribes. Hopefully one day these tribes will all be endowed with encyclopedias, or indeed access to the real understandings of the fascinating world around us. But I think it's quite interesting to note it will never be the case where certain scientists with outdated theories that have since been disproven with factual evidence travel to the farthest reaches of the globe to seek out underdeveloped tribes, preach dated theory, and then become like a god in their society. You don't really see that happen very often. That was point 2. Point 3. This is the longer point, and the final point of the video. It's been said that there is no difference between radical scientific teaching and religious extremism. In my opinion, anyone in accord with this statement is simply ignorant of the blinding obviousness that is the minor detail of a thing called evidence. Anyone who has genuinely, and I mean genuinely, looked at it from the angle I'm about to describe and still finds extreme religious beliefs to be sacred or valid, I commend, because there's nothing more that I can say to them. Let God be with them. Okay, so let's suppose that we have two hypothetical characters, one who represents the defense for science and reason, and the other who represents the defense for religion. Imagine that the scientist presented to a hypothetical court all of the factual evidences that he had discovered from the beginning, all of the volumes of encyclopedias, all the journals, databases, experimental results, theories, expansions, refinements, discoveries, etc., etc., the achievements of science in paper form. Imagine, if you can, that someone were to present this evidence in its entirety to a judge. The amount of literature that he would have to present, if amassed in its entirety, literally would not be able to fit into a courtroom. And now imagine he presented to the court item by item results that he discovered that oppose religious teaching. Undoubtedly, just to read through them all out loud would take more than a lifetime. Okay. So, now imagine that the person who represents religion presents the case for religion. The philosophical works written by the religious and case studies of situations where emotionally religion has been seen to have fruitful consequences in the court of law must be discounted. As Richard Dawkins says, to paraphrase immensely, just because something is emotionally comforting doesn't make it true. We're talking about cited literary evidences that a religious person has to back up their claims. The body of work they present: one book. This is the argument presented in favour of itself by religion, but what about the evidences that religion might have against science? Strenuous efforts have had money piled into them from organisations such as the Templeton Foundation to try and find gaps in scientific theory, and therefore creating room for God. As a side note, again, this is a definitive win for science in my eyes, because they're finally accepting that proof and therefore validity comes from that which can be tested. So, in fairness, they will have a sizable amount of literature to read through and discuss in the court. However, at best, one could expend all of this information in a vastly shorter amount of time, perhaps at constant reading 3 or 4 weeks. That's just a guesstimate from me, but I think that's pretty accurate. So when you look at it this way, you will see the blindingly obvious difference, as has always been the difference between science and religion, that science is based on what is observable, on what is evident. Religion has managed, through mass global indoctrination, to elevate the value of faith up to the same level of that which is to be observable, or that which is observable. The way that it does this is related to emotion, emotional blackmail, emotional bribery, emotional guilt, to name a few, and also, and perhaps equally as important, through actively discouraging free thought. Censorship has always been a key part of religion. It stifles voices which oppose it, along with similar vulgar practices and suppressions of basic logic. I digress, but the fact, simple and clear, is that when weighing up factual evidences, the arguments for religion by religion are literally and incomprehensibly dwarfed by arguments for science by science. Therefore, the conclusion for anyone who has not been emotionally blackmailed by religious dogma is that the vehement teaching of science, with its immeasurable volumes of work supporting it, versus the Bronze Age mythology of religion with no support other than itself, are two explanations of our existence which are categorically incomparable. If you can imagine this hypothetical court case scenario, in the case of dogmatism versus truth, which will the court find guilty? So, that's all for me from now, because I've noted to myself that any longer than 2 A4 pages of script and you run way beyond the 10-minute mark for any video. I hope you've enjoyed part 1 of Reasons Why I'm an Atheist, part 2 probably to be arriving soon. This is Jamesmon, and I'll hope to see you soon. supporting it, versus the Bronze Age mythology of religion with no support other than itself, are two explanations of our existence which are categorically incomparable. If you can imagine this hypothetical court case scenario, in the case of dogmatism versus truth, which will the court find guilty? So, that's all for me from now, because I've noticed to myself that any longer than 2 A4 pages of script and you run way beyond the 10-minute mark for any video. Hope you've enjoyed part 1 of Reasons Why I'm an Atheist, part 2 probably to be arriving soon. This is Jamesmon, and I'll hope to see you soon.